Tonight on the Hoosier Tailgate, the Hoosiers return to Memorial Stadium, and we're breaking down what it'll take to stay unbeaten. From key matchups to players who have to step up, to the betting lines that matter, get ready because the Hoosier Tailgate starts now.
And picked off up the sideline. Indiana, Asbury, walking them down. Woo! IU, America, they got a football team now.
Hello again, everybody. I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and thank you for coming to watch another live edition of the Hoosier Tailgate here on the Hoosier.com. We welcome you in as we get prepared for week 2 in this new 2025 season for the Indiana Hoosiers. 1-0 heading into this week against Kennesaw State, an 0-1 record, however, losing by a point at Wake Forest last week. And a familiar foe will be walking through the Bloomington, Indiana doors to Memorial Stadium. Dexter Williams, the former quarterback here at Indiana, is now QB1 for the Kennesaw State Owls. We welcome you here. If you're watching here via YouTube, X, Facebook, thank you for that. Make sure you get over to YouTube for the Hoosier on 3. Subscribe and like there on the YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you're reminded every time we go live here each and every week, Mondays and Thursdays during the football season, so you don't miss any of the Hoosier Tailgate Live. And once again, Indiana coming into this game 2-0 or 1-0. I guess I'm forethinking ahead to 2-0, but they do have a formidable foe this week in Kennesaw State. We talked about that earlier. And we're going to get into some of that here tonight as we get rolling into the tailgate tonight. But first, want to catch up on some things here that have in and around the Big Ten, as we always want to keep you abreast of what is happening in and around college football, but more importantly, the Big Ten. As always, if you've got a question for us tonight, by all means, put that into the chat box. If we can get to it, we will, and get it up on the screen that everybody can see what the question is, and I'll try my best to answer that. But remember, if you miss a show, you can always catch us on the Hoosier.com YouTube page, but also on podcast platforms throughout, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio as well. So if you're heading to the game and you got a little trip ahead of you, turn on the tailgate on your way to the ball game, or as you're sitting there waiting for the game to start in your tailgate party. And we do appreciate that as well. But some interesting things happened this week. As you can see right there, we're going to get started with the number 1 on the thing there. That's kind of an interesting dynamic. The Hoosiers drop 3 spots in the AP poll to 23, and the coaches poll, they remain the same at number 20. I'm not sure I can explain the reasons why the Indiana dropped, other than the fact they didn't beat Old Dominion by a bigger score. That can be only my reason of thought on that one. But I feel in some respects they should disband the top 25 until after week 3, heading into what would be the conference play, to get a indication of where all the teams are at that point at the start of the conference season. I think you would get a better read on all polls for that matter. And I would love for them to see them do that. However, you would not get the discussions that we are having right now. And I do think there is a bias for Indiana in the AP poll, if you want my honest opinion there. If you win, normally you stayed the same. Now Indiana doesn't win big enough, and they're now going to drop them. So, again, I think the situation there is Indiana's going to have to continue to prove they're just not a household name commodity, even though they went 11-2 last year. And even look at the situation at Indiana where halftime comes and the students exited the stadium in a game that was pretty tight at that point in time. But again, it's just not a scenario for Indiana right now where enough people are thoroughly aware that Indiana's tradition in some respects has changed. But that's why Coach Cignetti still has one of the toughest jobs in college football, not only on his own campus, but throughout the country, to prove that Indiana is a legitimate Big Ten player and can be that upper echelon tier of the Big Ten. And that will be a continued fight that they will have. But again, don't read too much into that with them being at 23 in the AP poll or in the coaches poll, because they stayed the same there as well. Yes. Well, I guess you could say that in some respects, but again, we'll see if that holds true as we go through the year of teams that win dropping in polls. We'll see if that holds serve, I guess you could say. Other thing of interest as well, as we head on here, we're going to get to the power rankings here in a second. And let me go ahead and break this up. This is the power rankings thus far for the Big Ten, put out every week. As you can see, Indiana is still at number 6 in terms of power rankings are concerned. Ohio State at the top spot, followed by Penn State and Oregon. Illinois is coming in there at number 4. And you can see Michigan with their big win over New Mexico. Bryce Underwood looked pretty good in that ball game. And then followed up by Indiana, Nebraska, USC, and so forth and so on. And these will change throughout the season. We'll try to bring you an updated list each and every week, so you know exactly where Indiana stands in terms of the power rankings within the Big Ten. And I think it's a good indication of, how a team's playing each and every week and how they're viewed within the conference itself. But you can see there that Indiana firmly in that upper echelon of the Big Ten right now, according to that power ranking status there in the Big Ten. Kennesaw State, as I said earlier, Dexter Williams to return to Indiana. The former quarterback that is now at Kennesaw State, he had left Indiana and went to Georgia Southern. I'm not sure what his reasoning was behind transferring from there to Kennesaw State. I know there's a new coaching staff in place, and maybe that was the main reason, and he had some connections there. We shall see with that, but played pretty well last week at Wake Forest in a game that was kind of a underwhelming ball game at 10-9. As Coach Cignetti said in his presser after on Monday, that Kennesaw State, not only did they miss an extra point, they did miss a field goal as well. So worst case scenario for them on Saturday should have been overtime. Best case scenario for them to win in regulation had they made the field goal. And I do think that, paints a pretty good picture that you do not want to take any ball club lightly. They got scholarship players as well. And even though they're a group of 5 team, that doesn't mean they don't have the capabilities to play a game that ultimately dethrones somebody at the P4 level. They're a fast-paced offense that likes to go at lightning speed. So Indiana will have to prepare not only for that aspect of things, but Dexter Williams has speed as well, a quick delivery, and he will be a good challenge for Indiana, having come off a game where the Old Dominion's quarterback, Colton Joseph, lit him up for over 150-plus yards on the day with 2 monstrous runs of 70 and 75 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. And Indiana will make sure that they've corrected those mistakes for the most part. The second run was a complete bust. First run was a combination of a scheme that they weren't expecting and gave a false key to the Mike linebacker, which was Hardy at that time, and he overran it, and they were able to split them. And that was the big two. But Dexter Williams coming in here, he was a big part of Indiana's big win at Michigan State a few years ago. In a game that they threw maybe 2 total passes in the game. It was one of those weird games that Indiana ended up winning, but was just an ironic ball game from start to finish. But he was the quarterback of that game. And then I think the following week is the week he blew out his knee. And that was the year that they lost Penix, I believe. And it was just a bad year all the way around for Indiana when it came to quarterbacks staying healthy in that regard. As we get going tonight as well, we'll get into the scouting report on this Kennesaw State team and video as well, but we will also provide again what I believe the goals for Indiana should be again this week heading into week 2 and what to expect on Saturday from Kennesaw State, both offensively and defensively. Kind of a roundabout scouting report. Very simplistic in nature, but if you're going to the game or watching the game, at least you'll have a little bit of a background on what Kennesaw State likes to do and how Indiana may or may not attack what they see on Saturday. But that will be something that we'll get to as well once we get into all that and get going here. And heading back to, if you did not see this when I popped it up earlier, the power rankings for week 2 in the Big Ten as well. And we are now full go in all things football, as we've got the high school going, we've got the college game going, and the NFL kicks it off tonight through the weekend with their big opening weekend. Eagles in Dallas, I believe, are on maybe now even. And that's a Peacock channel broadcast. But we'll get a chance to see that hopefully in the second half. And thank you for choosing the tailgate to get you started on this Thursday evening. Appreciate all that and all those that are joining us here this evening. Looking at the schedule ahead of this week for Indiana, or for the Big Ten as a whole. Maryland has NIU. That is tomorrow night, as does Western Illinois travels to Northwestern. That should be a game that, hate to say that, but Western Illinois, even though they got handed pretty well up in Champaign a week ago, I do think they are an improved team from when Indiana played them a year ago. And this may be a game that Northwestern may have to go on the early upset alert, because Northwestern struggled against Tulane, and they got a lot of things to clean up. Maryland came off a monster win last week, taking on the Huskies of NIU in Maryland. That's going to be a pretty big ball game to watch and take a peek at as well. The big one, big noon kickoff, Iowa at Iowa State. That should be a dandy of a game. Iowa State right now is pretty hot. They're 2-0. Iowa coming in with that win last week. And that being in Ames, Iowa, that will be the big noon kickoff game as well. That one, I think that's going to be a good ball game. And, Iowa State may just beat Iowa. They're playing really good football right now. FIU heads to Penn State. Kennesaw, Indiana, we said that's a noon kickoff as well, as is the FIU Penn State game. Indiana again on Fox Sports 1. Illinois at Duke. That should be a good ball game, and you are correct that Illinois could lose that ball game. A good Duke team and good defense there, and Illinois looked pretty good against Western Illinois, but they should. But this will be a big first test for them, and a lot of games in the Big Ten, as you see here, are kicking off at noon on Saturday. So for a lot of people, it'll be an early Saturday in terms of game times and end times. Then Ohio State takes on the big school of Grambling. That one, ironically, I can't believe they scheduled a game like that. But who are we to point to why would you schedule that? But again, that game could get out of hand and out of hand quick. Another big one is this Oklahoma State at Oregon. We'll see what all happens there. That's the CBS game of the week at 3:30. Miami of Ohio at Rutgers. Rutgers once again playing a team from the MAC. Miami of Ohio, another good MAC school. Rutgers held on to beat Ohio U a week ago in a game that they were up 31-7 and end up holding on to win like 31-27, I believe. And actually had to go for it on fourth down to try to seal the game because they were very, very lucky, and they held on to that win and made a big play on fourth down to secure that victory. So another test for Rutgers this week with Miami of Ohio. Middle Tennessee heads into Wisconsin. 4:00 kickoff there as well. That's a Fox Sports 1 game. That'll be on after Indiana. But Middle Tennessee coming into Wisconsin. We'll see where Wisconsin's at. They beat Miami of Ohio last week, shut them out, and we'll see what all happens there. SC versus Georgia Southern, and that will be the return of Helton back to USC, who was the head coach there at Georgia Southern. That will be the Fox Sports 1 7:30 game, and then the big one, ABC as well, is Michigan at Oklahoma. That game will be a good one to get a barometer on where Michigan is at, as well as where is Oklahoma at. Kevin Wilson, former head coach of Indiana, is back with Oklahoma now. His tenure there at, I'm drawing a blank, where he was at there in Oklahoma. His head coach only lasted 2 seasons, or I'm blanking it again, but he is back there with Oklahoma in a capacity, I believe, in an analysis position. So that one will be a great barometer for both schools. Purdue and Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois has had some good wins over P4 schools. I do believe they beat Northwestern a year ago, if I remember correct. And New Life is updating me. 34-31. I appreciate that. I said 31-27. Thank you for that. 34-31. And thank you, John, for helping this old man's brain. Tulsa was where Kevin Wilson was at. So appreciate you guys for keeping me straight. And but Purdue and Southern Illinois will be another big test for Purdue after they came off of a huge win over Ball State, 31-0, and looked pretty good doing that. And we'll see, because Southern Illinois will be another challenge for them. That's a BTN game of Saturday night. And then on NBC's big game of the week, Michigan State and Boston College. Again, that should be a dandy of a barometer for Michigan State as well. Year 2 there for Coach Smith. They got the quarterback who's pretty darn good. They had a good win first week. Now they get Boston College coming into them, and that will be an interesting ball game as well. And so some good games on tap for the most part throughout the Big Ten Saturday. And some games that you got to think the Big Ten has got to be leery of when you look at it up and down the schedule. I think Indiana is something like a 33-point favorite against Kennesaw State, which I thought was a big number for some reason. They didn't cover last week, and their margin this week went up in terms of the score differential, but we'll have to wait and see there. And New Life believes, I think we talked about that possibility as well with Illinois as going to Duke as a possibility of being a big game, and then Iowa State being the fact that is in Ames, Iowa, and that's always a tough place to play. I went to when I was at Ball State, we played at Iowa State a couple of times, and it's always a tough place to play. Ames is, and Matt Campbell's done a heck of a job there, probably as good a job as anybody in the country on taking a team that had a traditional losing streak type of ball club and has now turned them into a respectable Big 12 program that has competed in the upper echelon of the Big 12. And that's something that Indiana is going to have to aspire to be in terms of the consistency year in, year out of a ball team that can get big wins. And he's had some big ones. You know, he's beat Texas and some of the other schools. He's beaten Oklahoma. You know, some of the schools that Iowa State has struggled against over the years. Matt Campbell came in and has beaten those programs. And, you know, Indiana's got to get that signature win. You know, they've got to beat, you know, that Oregon, Penn State type of ball club this year, or any year for that matter. They got to do that and to really put them on the map per se. But we all should find out about that one per se. And when you get into this ball game on Saturday, again, I think that when you look at this ball game, and we're going to jump into some of these goals for the game before we jump over to the video for this evening. But Indiana really needs to, again, have a strong game on the ground, but they got to have a better game through the air this week. And while the defense gave up some gashing runs a week ago, they need to keep that in control, because this Kennesaw State team with Dexter Williams has the same ability that Colton Joseph had a week ago for Old Dominion. And if you're not careful, he'll take it the distance on you, because he's got that type of speed, and he's a better thrower than the Joseph kid from Old Dominion was a week ago. So they're going to have to be on guard on a lot of things and get the control of the line of scrimmage for that. You got that aspect of it. So if they can hold them to 280 yards on the day, 35% or less on third downs, I think I really like their chances if their offense can generate the offense we know they can. I mean, they had over 500 yards a week ago with over 300 on the ground. And unfortunately, had they had a couple more touchdowns in that red zone area, especially inside the 5, and had Cooper caught the touchdown pass that he dropped, I mean, we're talking a day of an offense probably having near 550 some odd yards and a score that was probably out of hand. But we'll have to wait and see. I do think they did great on third downs a week ago. I think they were over 50%. And again, I do think special teams will have to be in that neighborhood of scoring or setting up the score. And again, turnovers, generating at least 3 against Kennesaw State will go a long way, just like it went a long way on Saturday against Old Dominion. And Indiana came away with 3 turnovers that afternoon and a +2 overall on the day. So while these goals look lofty in some areas and maybe too small in some, I do think they are a realistic reflection of where this Indiana football team is overall week 2. And I do think they have a defense that can hold a team to under 100 yards rushing and under 200 passing, because I do think they have the quality of athlete, not only in the up front area to get pressure with 4, but a secondary that I think is legitimate, one of the better ones in the Big Ten. So when you take it all into account, those are some big numbers for an offense, but I do think they have the caliber of athlete to get that done. And we'll see what all happens in that one. And did I ever use a spy when we coached? Yes, in some respects that you would call it a spy, but you really got to be careful dedicating one true person to a guy, especially a quarterback, because you lose a person potentially in the structure of a defense. So To answer your question, yes, but you got to make sure you scheme it up correctly and not get too bogged down worrying about the spy aspect and you forget about the other 10 positions on the field, because that is just as important when you talk about defensive football. Indiana has to make sure they're gap responsible and sound in their approach. And for the most part, Saturday they were, with the exception of the first play of the game. And then the other big run where Wyatt chased the dive and the quarterback pulled it and went around the left end. They had actually had that play designed as called when Old Dominion was on the 2-yard line after they had stopped Indiana on that 4th down throw to the tight end, but the snap was high and almost over Joseph's head, and he was forced to give it. Had he pulled it there again, that could have been a bad sign as well, because the defensive end crashed, and again, there could have been a situation there where they got out to a big run again because the structure wasn't in good shape when you looked at it on tape. So Indiana, I'm sure, will be well coached up for what they can expect from this Kennesaw State team on Saturday against an athlete of the caliber of Dexter Williams. And they have some other cats that are pretty good as well when you look at some of their statistical aspect of things. I'm trying to pull up some of their stats from last week. Dexter Williams had a total of 170 yards on the ground a week ago, 3.7 yards a carry. And Coleman, their running back, he's a big kid, 17 carries for 68 yards, had a touchdown. Dexter Williams netted 44 yards on the day. So they didn't have an overly great day on the ground. They netted 158 for the day. And Dexter was 12 of 23 on the day for 149 yards. So he had an adequate day. I wouldn't call it a great day throwing the football in that sense. But he was 12 of 33, 12 of 33, which is not a great day. I apologize for that. And Wake Forest was 20 of 28 for 218 yards through the air. And they had only 130 on the ground. So you can see there, their best receiver that they have is Gabriel Benyard, number 1. He had 5 receptions for 103 yards last Saturday, was their leading receiver on the day. And let's see, he was their big dog in that regard. And Coleman Bennett is the tailback number 0, who rushed for about 70 yards on the day against Wake Forest. So again, Wake Forest snuck away a victory there, like I said. And it was a game like Coach Cignetti had alluded to. They could have been in a game where Wake Forest could have lost that ball game very easily in that regard. So I do think Indiana has a better up and down talent of them. I do not think Kennesaw State is necessarily on the same path of a team that Old Dominion was with what they had as a whole. Now, I do think Dexter Williams may be a better quarterback than the Joseph kid, because Joseph, I don't think, is a great thrower of the football. And that kind of came to the true last Saturday in how he handled things as the quarterback outside the 2 big runs, where Dexter Williams can do both fairly well. And we'll see some of that here on tape as we get ready to go to that here in a second. But like I said, I do think these goals for Saturday are a very realistic approach to this ball game. And, tonight, Dexter Williams will step back into that Memorial Stadium for the first time. And while he wasn't a part of Cignetti's group, I'm sure there are guys on our ball club that recognize the name and know who he is. And they understand what they all will need to do defensively to keep him in check, along with, the couple guys that they do have that are legit players. And that, I think, in itself will be the true test for this defense Saturday. Can they rebound and get back to the old ways of truly shutting down an offense and really dictating the terms of how that offense is going to operate on Saturday, which they did a multitude of times a year ago, where they really kept the team off guard in the run game and became a segment where they were able to really dictate what a team was going to be able to do, and was able to disrupt the passing game with getting pressure with four guys and blitzing on situational down and distances that were benefit for them. Now, we will see in that regard. That in itself will be a interesting dynamic for this defense on Saturday, and a challenge that they have been, I'm sure, put under by not only by Brian Haynes, the DC, but Cignetti as well, to eliminate the big mistakes and really get into getting back to the fundamentally sound defense that they were a year ago, and not having these lapses that they had on Saturday. But, Kennesaw State, they nearly shocked Wake Forest a week ago. They love to run the football. That's their primary base of doing things. And, they ran it over 60% of the time on Saturday. And they love to let Williams be the guy that dictates the show, running quarterback reads and things like this. It's a very similar structure to what we saw Saturday against Old Dominion, with probably a little bit more quarterback decisions by Dexter Williams on whether he gives it or pulls it and things of that nature. Some RPO run game is also involved. And, they got to think that they got a chance watching Old Dominion film when you got their quarterback jumping out on two big 70-yard runs against them. So it's a new staff, A to Z. So that's one thing. You're fighting a staff that's there for the first time. They're maybe not totally sure what they got under the hood, being that that's only been 1 week in competition. But I do think that their offense can get the big play, and that's kind of what that's what they're made of, and that's what Williams is. He's the centerpiece of their offense, and a running back that Coleman kid's got some good size. Defensively, they are a little undersized. They're quick, and things of that nature. But, they got a couple good linebackers in there as well. So it'll be a good matchup Saturday, A to Z. And I do think Indiana, if they play to the capabilities that Indiana's capable of playing at on both sides of the football and the special teams, they definitely have a chance to not only win the game, but do it early and not have to get into a 4-quarter battle, which would be nice. And for me, that goes back to what I was saying a week ago of Indiana gave Old Dominion a little blood in the water, and all of a sudden they're like sharks. They could smell it. Indiana can't afford to do that. They've got to be enough from start to finish where they start putting the nails in the coffin of Kennesaw State right from the beginning, and not give a team like that any hope. And that's why Wake Forest was in a ball game with them a week ago. They gave them hope. And next thing you know, they were lucky to get out of that game with a win from that standpoint. But I do think the goals that we put up there are attainable. I do think they're realistic and not something that we're wishing and hoping to obtain. And we'll see what happens with all that on Saturday. But Indiana has got to get into that groove early on Saturday on offense and defense, that they are playing complementary football from the start and just not pieces of here and there on the day. So it's going to be one of those games where they're going to have to make sure that they're dialing up what they need to do on defense to consistently contain a guy like Dexter Williams and have a front seven that gets after it and really imposes their will on a young Kennesaw State offensive line. But we got to have, guys reading their keys and stuff to get themselves in the better position to get in a position to make plays against Kennesaw State and not trying to do too much on the field that results in bust and missed gap assignments. Okay, let me see something here. The offense was so vanilla. Felt like Sig was keeping cards close to vest until we got. Well, that may be so, but I'll say this for the most part: not too many coaches play it to the vest. They play it to what do we have to do to win, and if that means opening the playbook enough to do it, they'll do it. Now, what they may have thought last week, Brian, to kind of go along with your thought process there, they may have skinnied it back so that would give people like Mendoza a lot of confidence in what was going to be called on Saturday and not trying to be too over the top with some of their play calls, and they maybe became too simplistic in that regard. And so that may have been a big part of that look on Saturday, that it looked pared down or simplistic and not want to tip their hands and stuff. But I don't think Sig's that type of dude. I think he's a guy that wants his coordinators to call a game and put the plays in that they think they can win with, irregardless of whether or not it appears on tape for Illinois or not. So, but I mean, not to say that that's not a correct assessment, but I just don't know if it was that more so than them trying to pare it down for Fernando to get off to a good start in the ball game and throwing the football. I mean, they threw a ton of outcuts to Williams there for the most part, to the number two receiver into the boundary. It seemed like every throw he was making was outcuts. So we'll have to see on all that aspect of it. Do we miss Tino? I don't say you miss Tino. You miss continuity. Having a guy that's been with you for so long, it's a continuity thing. I wouldn't say it's something that, they're missing him. I do think Whitmer is a really good coach as well, and he has a pedigree behind him of NFL experience. And not to say that trumps anything, but again, I don't think they missed Tino in that regard. So that would have been Hosa Wheeler would have been the young man that probably replaced CJ. Right, Brian. They did not run anything to the outside, including the RPO system that they've did quite well last year, and that's something that they'll definitely have to do on Saturday, is run some of that RPO stuff, because it was too much of a factor in their production a year ago. It's just not something you can say, oh, we're not going to do it this year. To me, that was what made them really good offensively a year ago. Now, we're not in the room, and maybe Fernando, that maybe not his forte like it was Curtis Rourke's. We don't know that. I hardly doubt that, but I was quite surprised of two things. One, no RPO game, which they need to have. And number two, they didn't target Surratt at all in the first half, which is offensive malpractice, in my opinion. So that can't be something that they can get away with this week. Okay, let's get over here to some of this. Throw up a few of this. I wanted to show something prior to this, though. Hold on here, boys. This is what I wanted. This is a structure alignment for Kennesaw State and kind of what they like to run. You know, they run some 30 front. They'll roll their coverage, so they'll look like they're in a 2 shell. And at the snap of the ball, they'll run to what we call a 1 high, or what we call this, or what I called it back in the day, was a 22, which meant 2 high safeties with a cover 2 look, but they rolled it strong, which means it goes to a cover 3 look and mentality. So you get some of that 30-man front from them as well. And then you'll also get what I call an under front, which is 3 and a 5 to the weak side of the formation, a 1 technique and a outside 5 technique, and a more true, what I call quarters coverage. Or in this case, it'd be 2 high, so we'd call it 24 because they're playing quarters. And they're not a team that overly blitzes a lot. They're not a team that does a lot of twisting and turning, but they also will run the true bear front as well in situational things such as short yardage or 3rd and medium type of scenarios. So they're not an overly diverse defense. I think they're a defense that they want to call their system and get their kids playing hard, but structurally sound. They don't do anything that I would say, man, they're just not sound in their approach with stuff. So you're going to see a 3-man front and a 4-man front from them on Saturday. And then offensively, they're a multi-formational team, but inside zone and some counter and the quarterback reads and RPOs is kind of what they are offensively. So again, it's not something that you would say that's unfamiliar to our defense. It's a very similar approach offensively to what you would say Indiana is when it comes to that stuff. So I think, whoops, here, let's get this set and back to the beginning. This is a game last week. Here's that 30 front that I was saying that they like to do. And again, they, at the snap of the ball here, what you're going to see happen is he's going to come down, or he may come down, he'll roll. You get something like this in the background there, but we'll let the tape take care of that and go from here with it. But again, this is a situation where Wake Forest there is running a quick pitch into the boundary, but at the top, they're running a counter play to the field. So the quarterback here has the ability to either run a quarterback run, which would be a counter to our right, or do a quick pitch in the boundary. And this is what he decided to do, and they gash him with it. And they got a hat on a hat, and fortunately there was a big enough tackle there in space that kept that from going the distance there. Next play they do here. This is what we call an under front. Again, 3 and a 5 to the top, 1 down here at the bottom. They're jumping into kind of a man scheme here, offensively speaking. And sorry about that. But whoops. Again, Wake Forest ran this little toss screen. It's a nice little play here that they've got, that they threw for pretty good success and got some good yardage Saturday out of it and was able to really do well. Here's their first goal line. They're just in a base front again. This is a mesh route that Wake Forest is running. And what you're going to see is 2 guys, you're going to have guys crossing. He's going to cross here. He's going to cross here. This guy's going to run a high corner and get a guy in the flat. But what you're going to see is this quarterback doesn't like what he sees, and he just takes it and runs it in for a touchdown on his own. So that was their first and only touchdown of the day. Here was a time where they did bring some pressure. 3-man front, bringing the weak side linebacker, and they run inside zone and get pretty good yardage on it. So I don't think this is going to be a team that Indiana is going to have trouble moving. Now, you have trouble when you have missed assignments like this on 2nd and 9, where the Will backer comes right through the B gap and the left guard just flat out doesn't block him. Oh my gosh. He's going to step down into the A gap where a guy's coming right through his face there and say, oh, sorry there, quarterback. And they end up getting a sack on it. So not great, you know. Power run play there on 3rd and 2. They're kind of in that bear front that I was talking about, bringing their front, slanting it to our right. And Wake Forest runs a power play, and there you go. This is what Indiana's got to do. First, get a power play, block down, pull around, kick out, and get 4 yards. That's what Indiana, I said they needed to do in situational things on Saturday instead of just relying on inside zone all the time. Same thing here. I mean, they get lucky on this one. 4th and 1, but you see the penetration they're getting. I don't think they get this one. And you get stuff right there at the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of bodies in there, men. Okay, here's Dexter and their group. This is the Coleman, the running back, as you can see there. Big, strong kid. Offensive line, I don't think is anything majorly big in what they do, but this kid runs pretty good. They'll spread you out. Again, inside zone. Look at the center get beat by Wake Forest's nose because they're in a bear front. He gets pushed about 8 yards in the backfield, but Wake Forest misses a bunch of tackles here, and this kid scores on this play. 1 tackle, 2 tackles, 3, 4. Into the end zone he goes. So you can tell that Wake Forest's defense wasn't a great stopper of things there. Again, quarterback draw is another play they like to run with Dexter, as you can see here. He's quick, man. He's quick and he can run. And he does a good job of it. But I wouldn't say that they're an overly big team on either of their fronts. Here's that quick arm of his. This is like an RPO concept. I mean, look at that defensive end, how far and quick he's up the field here. This cat that's coming in motion here, he's supposed to block this guy, and this guy's almost in his face. He throws it. And he rips it. That was a great throw by him. Some short yardage stuff here. So you can see there, good running back, that 0. He's got good feet. This is a great jump cut in behind there on a zone play. So he's a formidable guy running the football. No question about his ability in the backfield. But I think our defensive line overall will be too much for them up front, personally. I do think they have that ability. See, they're just bringing 3 guys on it, and they lose contain on him, and he takes a play where they should have had a sack or negative yardage, and he actually turns it into positive yards. This is a 3-man rush on 2nd and 9, and that's what Dexter can do, and that's what Indiana will have to guard against. And when you say somebody's spying him, in situations, you would say in this case, you can use it like a nose. The team will use a nose where they'll do this and drop him out. I don't like that matchup because the quarterback's usually a better player than a nose guy. Sometimes it's better to do it with a linebacker that he can kind of really spy and maybe match his ability in that regard. Brian, I'm going to say no, but that doesn't mean they won't on situations. I don't know how much Bryant is into spying guys because he wants a defense that's attacking. And when you start spying guys, you start messing with structure. And that's the one thing that defenses get nervous about. When you start spying a guy, you start messing with their structure, and you're effectively taking a guy completely out of the play because he's got one responsibility. That's the quarterback. So the best thing to do against a quarterback like Dexter is when you get a pass rush to close the pocket down as you're rushing and not give him escapes. But see here, they're dropping 8, and this linebacker gets too far over to his left there, and had he stayed home, number 43 there, he'd have been in a better position to take care of the responsibility of getting the tackle. But to answer your question, I don't think he will spy, but that doesn't mean they won't in situations. Like I said, I was never a big spy guy unless it was just one of those things that you did it situationally and you're worried more about a quarterback scrambling on passing downs as opposed to him running the read zone. Because in a read zone play, it's not that difficult to defend if you've got guys doing what they're supposed to do, and that means reading their keys. So on the second big run that Kellen Wyatt gave up, is he chased, and all he had to do was come up the field. If he comes up the field there, then there's no big run because he's there to make the play. Are you talking Bryson Bond spot there, Brian? I'm assuming, because Bond was more of a special teams guy. I know that he was second in the depth chart, probably at the safety position. And I don't know who that necessarily would be. I know Baldwin has been hampered by some injuries and stuff. I'm trying to see on my roster here if I can pull it up real quick. Yeah, Bryson Bond was that cat. He again, he got hurt on that one special team play Saturday, and I'm trying to take a quick gander at the roster here because I don't have my other one at my disposal right at this moment. Well, it could be a kid like Boyd. I think he's playing a safety spot, but I don't know where he's at in terms of their depth chart. The Knighton kid, the corner, they could do some things there where maybe they kick a guy back. Jamari Sharp is another name. I think he was one of the safeties a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. He's a senior. Because he was at corner for them, and I'm not so sure they didn't kick him back to the second on the hash. But I couldn't give you an overly honest opinion off the top of my head. And the one thing that Indiana doesn't do, and it drives me nuts, is they don't give out a depth chart, a too deep. And where a team like Kennesaw State does. And it bothers me that Indiana doesn't. And what I'm talking about is, let's see here. I just had it this evening. Where is that? I can't find it right now. Figures. Oh, wait a minute. I think this is it. Nope, that's the stats that I was looking at earlier. That wasn't it. Oops, sorry about that, guys. Well, anyway, too deep that would legitimately tell you who's going to be the backup who would take his spot in the secondary at this point. I really just don't have a total grasp there because, like I said, Indiana does not release a true two deep for their offense and defense. And it bothers me not being able to see that. Like Kennesaw State actually has a two deep for offense and defense that you can look to see who's backing up who their starters are, where Indiana does not put one out. I don't know why they don't put one out, but they just never have for some reason. I don't know if that's something with their communications staff that just doesn't do it, or that's something that Sig has employed. But I don't think they did do it when Allen was there either. Let's see here. Saw a Facebook post that said Sig and his family tipped a Bloomington waitress $900 on a $61 tab. Well, that wouldn't be surprising for me, just because Sig, and he's making quite a bit of money. So $900 to him's probably like tipping 50. But that shouldn't take away from the generosity that he showed somebody that is feeding them, bringing their meals to them and everything. So anyway, well, hey guys, I want you to be able to get to the game to see the Eagles and Cowboys play this evening as well. But I hope that tonight you got a little bit of insight of what I think is going to happen on Saturday with Indiana and what I think they need to do. There's a couple things that I think Indiana has got to make sure that they do on Saturday, more so than what they showed this past weekend against Old Dominion offensively. They've got to get the RPO game tuned up. They've got to get themselves in a situation where they're targeting Surratt. However they do that, whether that's throwing the ball to him, kicking the ball out to him on quick screens and things of that nature. But they have to do that. That kid is too good of a wide receiver and a player overall not to have the ball in his hands some. And again, I think Hemby and Black and BB all three of them are capable. Do we find ways to kick the ball out to them on the perimeter, swinging past to them, type of deal, or, pitching it on a quick pitch type of deal and letting them go run. And then Fernando's got to throw better deep balls. That's just flat out got to do better. He's got to get the ball in an area where it's catchable, but more importantly, he's got to get air underneath it so that a wide receiver can run under it. And I do think that Indiana will take some more targeted throws, and when it comes to throwing it deep. But I do think if Indiana can get the RPO game going, as well as Surratt going as well, I do think they can have a big day against Kennesaw State, just like I think Indiana's defense as well, if they can get back to what they were doing a year ago, dictating the play and dictating to an offense what they were going to do and not going to do, and not give up the big gashing plays. That's, you just can't do that and expect to win consistently if you're going to give up 2 touchdowns of 70 yards or more. So it's going to be a situation, I guess you could say, Indiana has a better chance of getting themselves in a position Saturday against this ball club because they have tape of their last game. That always helps. And they'll have a better understanding of the personnel that are coming out on the field Saturday. So we'll have to wait and see. Again, that's a noon kickoff there in Bloomington. FS1, if you cannot be there, hopefully there's another big crowd. And there at Bloomington, it's supposed to be a very nice day on Saturday. We'll have to see what happens. But again, thanks for watching here with me this evening. And again, thank you so much for being a part of the Hoosier Tailgate. But for now, I'm the coach, Shannon Griffith, and this has been the Hoosier Tailgate. Right.